Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. And after sleeping for like 12 hours last night, I woke up to absolute chaos on the timeline this morning with a surprise roster change going down from the Boston breach. This is especially crazy because we didn't even know this was possible, and especially because if there was one man you thought would come back, it'd be Nero. That's not the case for some very dramatic reasons we shall get into. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. So Champs is just about coming up. These will be the highest appearances of current CDL players in the league. The record has Scump been to 10, I think he might have been. I'm pretty sure Clay has been to at least 9. So I think it's around about there that the all-time record is. But of the current crop of players, Slasher is going to get to 8. Accuracy will get to 8 as well. Dashy will get to 7. It seems crazy, right, that Dashy's been competing for this long because he still feels like a relatively young player. And he's a young player, like, by age, general, like, population-wise. But for an OG, like, he's kind of a veteran now of the scene in a way. Like, his first champs was back in Infinite Warfare, which I guess, including this year, is now basically 7 years ago, which is kind of remarkable. But, I mean, yeah, I suppose it is what it is. Competed first in 2017, and since then, I guess, yeah, this is the 7th World Championship for him coming up shortly. I believe Drazah should have maybe one more here as well if you're including the MW19 season where he did play for OGLA at the time. But these are how the numbers look. Attach getting to 8 as well. Attach would have been at 9 if you didn't miss last year's one because Minnesota Rokkr were not particularly good. We had a great weekend, of course, in Toronto, but as a surprising result of it, changes are now going to be happening. I thought maybe we'd see a roster change here from Boston, and that seems to be what we're getting. But the change we see is massively surprising to me. The way it's going down, all the drama associated with it. And with Boston doing this, especially as this now seems to be allowed what they're doing, could other teams follow suit? And we'll get into why in a second. Because I thought the understanding was that if they wanted to, they could bring back one of their players from their bench. I thought the season was over for roster changes going into Major 5 or even the Major 5 qualifiers. And after that time, if teams wanted to, they could bring someone from their substitute team up to their starting team, make a change like that. That's never really changed. And therefore, I thought, all right, Boston, they'll bring back Nero after the tournament because it wasn't working out with Kremp individually. He started well, it was good in control, but over the last couple of weeks wasn't going so well. And I thought Boston would say, you know what, the experiment fails, you know, the Kremp thing failed a little bit, and we should go back to the roster we got top 4 with a while ago with Nero, Vivid, Beanton, Awakening, and run it back with that for champs. I thought that's what they would do. That's not happening though for a couple of different reasons. One of which, and possibly the main reason, is the Boston situation with Nero and the relationship there, which was a big talking point actually going around at the events over the last couple of days, and we'll get into that here in a second, because the rumor was emerging last night that Snoopy is likely to replace Vivid on the starting team. This is absolutely wild. So from both sides, right, not the fact that, you know, Snoopy's coming in necessarily, which is also crazy, mainly because he's not a substitute player. This is the thing. Just because he's on the academy doesn't mean he has a substitute contract. If he had a subcontract, he'd have to be paid 50 grand a year, whatever the minimum is, right? And I believe that most of the academy players probably paid a bit less than that. I imagine Doug makes more because content and all this stuff, and he's Doug Santa Martin, baby. But just because you're on the academy doesn't mean you're a substitute. I thought their sub was Nero, right? Which he is, but Nero isn't even on their academy. He went onto a different roster, and we'll get into that in a second. So Snoopy's coming in, and we'll have to figure out exactly how. But going out is Vivid, which again is massively like Vivid. Man, they're messing this guy around. He was in, he was out, he was back in again, now he's back out again. I don't really think he's done anything wrong, to be honest. Like, what is the management thinking over there? I've got to ask the questions at this point because, look, teams like Minnesota Rokkr, we take the mick out of them constantly for making questionable calls, and I think for good reason, but they've put it together at the end of the year in fairness for them. They did get over the line for the World Championship with a decent seeding at that, actually. And again, apparently this change is coaching related, and the players have not made this decision. It's not one that the players have decided on. Now, yes, look, they came top 12 at the major. Losing to London is pretty embarrassing. And honestly, when they made the change a while ago, they get top 4. They make the change for Kremp. I'm like, look, fair enough. Try something different, because if you want to win events, then sure, you might want to give it a go just to see if you can actually take a step forward. But when it was quite clear that their change was a step back, they didn't have any leadership going around, I thought they would probably revert that call and they would decide, you know know what, let's kind of go back to where we were and try and secure like a top 4 decent finish at the end of the year, rather than letting things fall into chaos and also break all the relationships with the players. That's the issue they have. Like, I can't imagine Vivid is happy about this, and Nero is most certainly not happy about this. So Crone kind of says this as well, and also Jacob L corroborated this and said, yeah, this is probably going to happen. Snoopy in, Vivid out. I mean, okay, so Snoopy, first of all, he's a player recently on the academy, Mexican player. Doug Martin scouted him, brought him into that team, and he's a very impressive player. I expected him to be in the league next season at some point. The fact that he might just have to be subbed in for Champs is absolutely remarkable. But look, he's a really talented player, no doubt. I watched him have some crazy maps. He's super fast and aggressive, play like he just hits all his shots. He's a really good player for that academy team. And again, it feels like in a way Boston is screwing over both sides of the story. They're messing around their main team and they're screwing their academy, because poor Doug, he's brought like 4 guys, the likes of Kremp and, you know, Beans, and obviously now Snoopy, and even way back in the day Dashy on the complexity team. Guys like this that he's scouted and brought up and helped just get taken away from into the starting team, and now his team has like no pro points remaining. It's an absolute mess. And even this in Pentagram kind of confirming this is going to be true, because Pentagram recently came into the Boston Breach Academy in the position where you might have thought Nero would have played, but as he says, I proved myself a long time ago, never got a single opportunity to even play once as a starter in the league. I think he was on the Thieves right as their substitute player, and even won like a amateur player of the year at one point a couple of years ago, but never really got a chance. And almost kind of implies that he, you know, he's had enough and he's done with this, right? So, and you can understand the frustration, because from the Boston Academy perspective, those guys are, you know, trying to go to Champs to make some change, and they might not be able to do so because now they won't have the pro points necessarily, and their team's getting messed around. Like, I feel bad for all parties involved. And as Doug says, maybe the rosters in Challengers should have just been locked going into like the Toronto Major, but then again, what if someone gets called up to the starting team? So we've got to get to the point of what's going on with Nero. First of all, why isn't Nero the one to come back in? I thought they'd put Nero back in for Kremp. Now, apparently, they refused to pay for his travel to the Major. He turned up with not even like he had a GA Bowl pass. He didn't even have a substitute pass. Apparently, they paid for Zed's pass because he's actually another substitute, so they decided to do that instead. And what they've effectively done is burned their bridges with Nero here. I spoke to him on the weekend and he confirmed that, yeah, this is indeed true. And there was other things going on as well. It wasn't just, you know, just this. And there was a bit of discussion there between Bance and Parasite on, like, look, they paid for everyone else to come along. And I get Bance's point, but maybe Bance, like, I read Bance's point to say, well, you know, if they paid for everyone else to come, they should just pay for Nero as well, right? Because he's an additional substitute for them. He had to pay, like, everything to fund himself there. They're not treating him like an actual substitute for the roster. And, you know, now maybe they're in his DM saying, hey, please come back, like, you know, we didn't mean it type thing. And there were some other things as well that Nero wasn't particularly happy with the way that Boston have handled things over the last couple of months, to my understanding. So, you know, even as Jacob then says, and it was confirmed that because Zed's also a substitute, according to Haggy at least, therefore that's why they fulfill this requirement, because they have to pay for some substitute to come through. So it's an absolute mess, basically. And now they're forced into a corner where I think they probably would have wanted to bring Nero back into the team. But that's not going to happen for various reasons, and therefore they're looking at other alternatives, and it turns out there is another alternative to bring in Snoopy.
Technically. And so is Zed. All right, so for these tournaments, you have to fly out your subs. They didn't pay for Nero's travel or accommodation at any capacity to this tournament at all. And he was playing in Challengers. He had to fund himself there, even though he's technically a sub and was a pro on the team. That is up. What? Yo, hell no.
So just to clarify, so I've had 2 people who work for CDL teams.
Okay.
Message me that supposedly, according to them, again, I haven't confirmed this with the league. So if like someone from Activision comes out, the outside comes out and says, well, that's not what the rule is, you know, I'm just telling you what I've been told.
Right.
Is that there are a couple of options as far as roster changes or changes you can make before champs. You can move someone from your starting lineup to a substitute spot, substitute to a starting lineup. That's one thing you can do. And you could also sign a player to your roster that was not a player who was signed to a roster at Toronto. So if they were not on a subcontract or not a starter contract at Toronto, right? They were just signed to a random deal. They were signed a no deal. That is someone you can pick up for champs.
Okay, so basically from Zed's POV, I'm just... Okay, he said I could say. Okay, he said, right, that losing to London
Yeah.
is not gonna win them champs. That's what he said. He said,
I mean, he's not wrong.
and he's not wrong. He's not wrong at all. Like, and that's where it is, throwing the darts at a dartboard, right? Just making the change, right? At least he's just ripping the Band-Aid off. He's not wrong. He's not wrong.
So the way this seems to be possible, according to Ben, is that you can bring a player from your substitute's position into your starting team, but if a player wasn't signed to any roster at Major 5, they are accessible as well. So anyone in Challengers that didn't play at Toronto's Major 5, anyone even in the Pro League or formerly of the Pro League that wasn't playing at the Major could be signed. So technically, Surge could come along and say, hey, I mean, I don't know why Surge would want iLLeY, to be fair. I'm not sure it makes sense for roles, but technically they can sign iLLeY for champs. Like, this is apparently a possibility, which I'm not sure it should be a thing. I'm not opposed, obviously, just because, you know, I like the Rostermania stuff, so I'm not going to say no, but this is a bit of a surprise, right, that it's possible. Even, yeah, TJ says this. Okay, he played at Major 5, so unfortunately, I guess he can't play for Boston come champs, but it's definitely an interesting possibility because apparently Methods could, right, technically, if Boston wanted to say, hey Zin, come back in please for this event, or if OpTic wanted to say, look Scump, come back in, apparently that's possible because of the way the rules are working. So massively intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. I thought this is funny from CDL Pal, right, like poor Snoopy, the guy just came into challenges as like a super young fresh player and now he's, you know, getting stuck straight into the starting roster and has to really perform come the World Championship. Is this going to work? Are they going to get this crazy honeymoon period? Now, as Zed said in the clip with Zuma, right, look, they lost to London. That's unacceptable. They've got to make a change, and I can understand it. But also, technically, if they wanted to, Doug could come in, right? If they don't need Zinni, then maybe, you know, Doug is an actual option, theoretically, here. And I know people discussed it last night. If they want a little bit of championship winning experience, then maybe Doug is actually an option. So apparently there's more options on the table than we considered here for these teams. So it's not just Surge that could potentially bring Gwyn in. They could do more than that. I don't know what Boston are thinking, though, honestly. It's absolute madness with this organization over the last couple of months or so, and they've gone down this route now for champs. Vivid getting gone. I guess they know that they've absolutely murdered all their bridges with these players, by the way, so next season they're not going to be there anyway. They'll go somewhere else. I imagine that's the case, at least, because, yeah, I'm not impressed by what they've been playing at over the last couple of months. And then poor Doug Sins Martin and co, they've got to figure out who they bring in, because, you know, he's giving some gas here to aBeZy, but he's not going to be able to get him on his team. So I don't know what this means for even the academy roster and their chances of qualifying for champs, because if Nero was you know, coming back into the starting team, Krent was back to the academy, they'd have a great chance. But I would say now both of their rosters are kind of screwed, which is probably not exactly optimal. How will Snoopy and co do at champs? Who even knows at this point? They play OpTic round 1. Maybe this is an attempt to say, you know what, like, they're going to have no VOD on us to prepare for. We're just going to come in with a completely wiped, you know, clean slate of a team that OpTic going to have no idea what we're going to do, which maybe is actually an advantage. I think maybe there's a world in which they beat OpTic and then just get absolutely clowned on for the rest of the tourney. But it certainly raises some really interesting questions. So very much enjoyed to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.